and I'm the Director of Global Product Marketing at Zerto. And we just wanted to give you a recap of everything that we heard at VMworld a couple weeks ago. It was a fantastic show for us, really great theme, lots of activity at the booth, lots of social activity. So we just wanted to let you know what we heard. So I have a couple of members of the Zerto staff with me here today. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Sean Masters, who's the team lead for the North American SE organization. And he'll talk about top customer questions, things we heard at the booth. He was doing a lot of demos for us and going to a couple sessions. And then we're going to pass it over to Jason Nolan, Cloud Sales Manager. And we had many of our cloud service partners there who provide disaster recovery as a service. And I'll talk about some of the new technologies we had and how we were able to work with them and offer these great services to our end customers. And then Shannon Snowden, our Senior Technical Marketing Architect, will talk about Tech Field Day, some of the social stuff, and then I'm going to close it out with some activities we did with our joint technology partners, and then some of the fun stuff too. So Sean, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer. So I want to talk a little bit more about what customers were hoping to see from Zerto while we were out at VMworld. Had an amazing time out there. Pretty much never left the demo stations, which is absolutely awesome. But talked a lot about a lot of the upcoming improvements to Zerto, really things like Hyper-V support, support for Amazon, AWS, S3 buckets, really for those lower cost DR models, right? Talked about improvements to the user interface that are planned for the next release, which personally, having been here for a couple of years now and seeing that evolve over time, it's really awesome to see that come to fruition. Also talked with a lot of customers about automation. One of the big things we heard a lot about at VMworld was the rebranding of the automation suite to vRealize and a number of other rebranding from VMware. And we've been talking with a lot of customers at VMworld and since about tying out into those different automation platforms with our REST API. In fact, we have some customers already working on that today. We also talked about the hybrid cloud quite a bit, and it's kind of a high level. Some people think of it as a sales thing, other people think it's a technology thing, and the question for us was just how do we support it, right? And the great thing with us is that we really have this design in mind, and especially supporting both VMware vSphere and Microsoft Hyper-V, and soon other hypervisors as well, where whether it's a private cloud or a public cloud, and certainly that hybrid model where you combine the two in your own infrastructure, you'll really be able to enable that regardless of the underlying technologies entirely, because Zerto will be able to support all of those different models and move your workloads between any of them. One of the last things I thought we wanted to touch on here was the flash storage market. So for anybody who went to VMworld, you probably saw the dozens now of these flash storage vendors, and certainly the software-based storage solutions as well that really rely on SSD and caching and other technologies. And the great thing there, from a Zerto perspective, being totally storage agnostic, we support certainly the flash environments and the mixed environments, but really it helps you break things like vendor lock-in, right? You can buy the best storage for the job, whether you need performance or capacity or caching, whatever that may be, but also really lets you focus on upgrading your infrastructure kind of data center at a time, or even one storage array at a time. So you don't have this tie down into having to rely on that more physical protection model where you have to buy the same vendor across the place. Lets you also move into this flash tier now where you get higher performance, not just for Zerto in business continuity disaster recovery, but for all your production workloads as well, right? And that's what's most important to us.
Actually, before I move on to the next slide, or while I'm moving on to the next slide for Sean, one thing I forgot to mention is we absolutely want to hear your questions. So the panel that showed up for me on the right-hand side of my screen, you'll see those questions panel. Please type in your questions, and we'll take those perhaps throughout, but definitely at the end. Sorry, Sean?
Not a problem, Jennifer. So in terms of Microsoft Hyper-V support, we're actually showing this at the booth in VMworld. So I hope any of you there got a chance to see things. The really interesting thing here from my perspective, I worked with Hyper-V years back before it was called Hyper-V. For those of you who recall, they're the old kind of workstation-based virtual solution became Hyper-V, and now it's Hyper-V 2 and then Hyper-V 3. But I've been working with VMware the whole time, and that's been my entire focus for many, many years now. Hyper-V is making a huge play in the market, and they've got about 30% of the virtualization marketplace, and it's only growing. And the fact that we are able to actually move into our Hyper-V beta at the end of this month and support those Hyper-V environments that people are starting to move to, but also to support cross-hypervisor replication recovery between VMware vSphere and Microsoft Hyper-V. The great thing here, just like I mentioned with storage, we enable you to focus on those business needs, technical needs, maybe the budgetary constraints, and use not just any storage, any hardware, but soon any hypervisor as well. And this is really the kind of first step in the realization of that future that we're going to talk a little bit more about throughout the rest of this webinar here today as well. Excellent. Now, the last piece from my perspective, it was really some of the big questions that we were asked, certainly of the engineering team, but of the other folks out there at VMworld as well. And I thought, honestly, I thought we did a fantastic job at this. And I saw kind of some common threads, which is great because it means that people are looking at very similar models for disaster recovery out there in the marketplace. People looking at comparing Zero Virtual Replication with something like a Site Recovery Manager. And the great thing, it wound up being perfect timing because we actually had this blogger who, right around VMworld, released this just huge and very deep dive article about a very point-by-point comparison of Zerto versus vSphere Replication and Site Recovery Manager. So I thought that was great. We had that to bring to the show floor, and I'm sure that others in the ecosystem did as well. Also asked a lot about protecting databases, and to me, I thought that was a great opportunity to talk about the number of customers that Zerto supports and I personally support, where we're protecting incredibly critical applications, generating sometimes hundreds of records even a second for financial industry vertical, for the healthcare vertical out there, where this data is incredibly critical, and we've got just so many customer references and use cases around protecting that big item, right? The big SQL environments, the big Oracle environments. And I think it's really testament to the level of protection that we offer today and that we're working on improving towards in the future. Certainly asked a lot about DR testing, right? So there are definitely other VCDR providers on the show floor during VMworld, and one of the biggest things, and certainly I hope it's the case, having been an admin for 15 years, I want to use the software to test twice a year, once a quarter. I'm not exactly buying it because I hope there's a disaster coming, right? I just need to know it's going to work if that happens. And the great thing with Zerto, of course, being that we can do these live DR tests during production hours, no impact to the protected virtual machines or running applications, no impact to replication performance. And honestly, the kind of competitive question up front, or even the heavier question around database protection was big, but just the questions around testing and trying to improve that and improve on the delivery there back to the business, that was the number one question for me, frankly. And I'm sure if I caught up with the other engineers, they'd say the same.
I just have a little bit to add to that also, because one of our customers came by and they were actually able to use their DR testing to justify the purchase for new hardware. So they didn't have a dedicated DR site. They were running 50% production in Site A and 50% production in Site B. So when they did have to fail over, it was basically 50% of the environment would move one way or the other. And they did a DR test. They did it during business hours. It was non-disruptive to their environment, but they weren't able to power up all the virtual machines in a timely manner. And after some analysis, they were able to conclude that they didn't have enough processing power or enough servers. So when you think about that, being able to execute that disaster recovery test during business hours without disruption, what that does is put you in a more real-world scenario in terms of how your environment's going to react. So we help that customer go back and say, look, we're going to need to buy more servers. Here's the issue. You can see it very plainly. And it made his job a lot easier, because I don't know how everyone else does on the phone, but justifying new hardware that's big and expensive can be challenging. So with the documentation right there, it was very easy for this particular customer.
Incredibly challenging. And you know, one other thing I'd make on that as well, Jen, is that, you know, the fact that we can do this live, if anyone on the webinar here today hasn't gotten their hands on Zerto already, this is something that you do even in the free trials that we do, right? It's a full access license. You protect some virtual machines, and you can sit there in the middle of the day and actually test the software and see your applications recovered live to your secondary site, to a colo facility, and so on, right? So it's a really, really great way to prove this out before you go, you know, no offense to the sales folks out there, but before you go signing a PO, right? You can say, listen, I need to do these 3 tests. I need to bring up my database. I need to bring up my application server. I need to bring up this very critical system. And you can just do that with a couple clicks of the mouse. The last thing here, you know, we kind of throw it in as a gag, but reality is here, the how do I get a T-shirt question got asked even on the back end to the engineering team. Funny thing with that, from my perspective, so we had, what was it, like 4,000 shirts or something we brought to this event?
Yeah.
And we actually ran out of shirts by like Tuesday night or Wednesday morning. So it was amazing to me because we, you know, we based our T-shirt buy on last year's numbers and estimated growth, and we like blew that out of the water. So it was pretty cool to, pretty gratifying to see that. Not great for everybody coming by looking for one, but pretty cool to see all the same. So
I got a question. This is Shannon, by the way. I'm looking at the questions, and this one's relevant to this section, Sean, so I want to go ahead and ask it. So the question is, does it mean that we use an isolated network for failover and failback process? And that's a testing question, so if you want to dive in a little bit on that, how we do it.
Absolutely. So we do use isolated networking for testing. You could also refer to that as fenced networking. We actually also temporarily isolate some storage out so that when you do these tests, you're not impacting production, but you're actually also not impacting replication at all. That's why I say it's great even in trial. You know, you can install Zerto without any impact, no reboots, restarts, anything else, doesn't impact the production application. Put them into a protection group in Zerto and just start doing test failovers, and it really doesn't impact anything. You get a very, very quick answer to, you know, is Zerto the solution for us? Or, you know, do we need to dive into something more complex of a recovery plan and so on? It's a great question. Absolutely isolate that networking.
Yeah, I had one other that's not in here, but one that's very relevant that I hadn't thought of before, and I've been working with SRM a long time, was there was a use case, I don't need to drill in deeply to it, but the use case was this customer wanted to, they had SRM, and they wanted to do a test with a WAN outage. And SRM was not able to do that. And so that's one thing that I got to thinking about is like that's something that, you know, we do. If they want to have a WAN outage and still do tests, it's still possible, but apparently with SRM it's not possible.
Yeah, and you know, I have, I should say we, but we have customers with regulatory requirements where that's not an option. Right, and Zerto solves that requirement by allowing them to do those tests during that, you know, hard power down scenario. So absolutely a great point to bring up as well.
Okay, great. Let me get the slides to there we
go. Yeah. So, folks, that's the end of my rambling, at least for now. But I'm going to turn things over to Jason Nolan, our cloud sales manager, who's going to talk a little bit more about the cloud side of the world.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. I share a lot of sentiments with you about my experience at VMworld, talking with different service providers and end users. And it's great to see the progression over the years as people become more familiar in their maturity of using the product. But working with the service providers, there was a tremendous amount of excitement in addition to just the T-shirts, but also about some of the new features, right? So one of the biggest features that was released before VMworld earlier this year, a few months ago, was the offsite backups that we released. And with this offsite backup feature set, we start to introduce for service providers the ability to have the freedom of choice to enable longer-term retention of the customer data without having to leverage additional technology. So the messaging that we heard at VMworld from the service providers was they love the interface, they love the DR as a service platform, and they're, the two primary use cases that we see with service providers, with the cloud providers today, is obviously the DR as a service replication from a customer site into the cloud, which is often referred to as the hybrid cloud, going from private to managed. And then the second use case that's very common as well is a fully managed solution going cloud to cloud with the service provider where they're hosting both production and DR. And with the offsite backups, what we're really doing is introducing another use case. We're allowing them to enable backup as a service with one platform. And the message and the reception of this from the service providers has been overwhelmingly positive. While the feature set is really new, and there are a number of enhancements and improvements that are in the pipeline to constantly improve the product, the feedback has been extremely positive. The ability to grab a backup from the target site rather than the customer's on-site premise, and rather than passing replication for backups and DR separately over the same bandwidth, the service providers and the customers alike have been really looking for a solution like this that can deliver high-performance enterprise-class RPOs and RTOs. And so what we're seeing with the service providers is they're hungry, they're excited, they're testing, and they're starting to develop new products that can align potentially a low-cost, no-cost backup as a service that's included with their DR functionality to help them be more competitive and expand with their customers in the marketplace. So another thing that's generating a tremendous amount of excitement is Zerto's outlook on the cloud fabric, this concept that we've introduced to enable workload mobility. And this is something that has really hit home for our partners both in the cloud provider space and in the channel. What's really important here is that this new strategy is really enabling production workloads to be easily moved from private clouds to managed service providers who we're working with and to the public cloud. And there's no hardware or hypervisor dependencies whatsoever. All right, so the IT team, which nowadays can be a combination of both the end user team, the enterprise team, and the service provider team. Nowadays we see sort of not only hybrid cloud, but a hybrid IT group that's stretched across these cloud implementations. The IT team can actually select a strategy based on the service level for the applications and the cost requirements. All right. So the cloud fabric really introduces the ability to have true freedom of choice for the IT team to migrate the workloads across platforms without any dependencies, to really be agnostic. So we're hardware agnostic and cloud agnostic. And this is a really powerful message. A lot of the service providers have really started to dig into this cloud fabric messaging, and we're starting to see several service providers starting to engineer, managed public cloud offerings, because the messaging that they're getting from their customers is they want to potentially leverage some of the cost benefits or features of an Amazon Web Services or an Azure, but they're not sure how. And so what we're seeing as the cloud marketplace continues to evolve is the feedback from the cloud customers is they're really excited because this gives them a chance to offer value to their customers by managing workloads between the private cloud offering that's fully managed in the cloud provider space and leveraging the public cloud as well, and managing the migration of workloads between the two for their customers as part of their services. So this messaging has been really powerful. It's really resonating with customers, and it was really well received. So it was great to see that. I think next year we'll have to quadruple the number of T-shirts. Actually, to joke a little bit, but it was really neat to as much as they keep up with the product and the feature set, they're keeping up with the swag as well. So kudos on that.
That's right, the Master of Disaster T-shirt. Okay, so Shannon, over to you on Tech Field Day.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. So if you're not familiar with Tech Field Day, it's something I highly encourage you that are not from vendors or they're not analysts either. So they're basically bloggers or thought leaders in the space, and then at VMworld we had an opportunity to present at Tech Field Day. And the thing as a vendor, what you don't want to do is you don't want to go into Tech Field Day if you don't have a good product, because the sport in Tech Field Day is to pick it apart. I mean, that's the reason why you're there, is that you sort of need to go through that forge a little bit to get tempered to make sure that what you're offering is valid. And so when we're there, you'll see our demo as well as our presentation and our roadmap. So there's 3 things there to check out that we did. And we, of course, talked about the Cloud Fabric message that Jason just talked about, and why we're doing it, and the logic behind it, and how it is going to support not only today but at the future sort of deployment. So, you know, right now things are still not depending on containers and Docker and all that. That's sort of the future way of doing things. But having mobility of those virtual machines and OSs and applications in there, that's still the core of what needs to happen, and that's what we're doing to enable you to go between different clouds and different providers. But we're also allowing that future to grow out with public clouds, and as other features are added in, such as containers, as they start taking off, then we're certainly going to have that level of capability as well. So what we did in our demos, what you'll see, is we demoed the offsite backup that Jason was talking about, and we actually performed offsite backup to Amazon. So it was in an S3 container, and you see that happen. And we also demoed what's coming in beta at the end of the month, which was a Hyper-V replication. And the striking thing about that was we also are very aware of a common problem that any admin or any person trying to support all of this cloud ecosystem, and it's growing, as far as how do you support it. There's too many tools, and we're very aware of that. So our interface, when I did the offsite backup to Amazon on a VMware infrastructure, that interface looks exactly like the one that I used for showing Hyper-V, because our functionality and the way that we present it are just more features in a familiar interface, as opposed to trying to add more complexity to the actual management of it. So we keep that in mind as well. So we're building out capability of the hybrid cloud for the Cloud Fabric, but we're also keeping in mind that it needs to be easy to manage. So if you check out those demos, I think you'll find them very interesting to see. There were some other demos there that I think from our partners. They were also at Tech Field Day, so that should also tell you that they're pretty significant demos as well. One I would point you to is Data Gravity, that won Best to Show. It is a fantastic product to look at. It's a great presentation too, the way that they did it. So that's kind of it for Tech Field Day, Jen. So I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great, because it's my turn to present. So as you can see, we had the opportunity to work with some of our really great partners as well. So we have some joint content with Pure Storage, mentioning flash vendors in particular, as Sean did. What I like so I like all our partners equally, but I think one thing that's really innovative with the flash technology vendors is, they are supportive of the message that, you don't need to buy two. Yes, they want you to, but they understand that you need to start somewhere. You need to start with one. And I found that really innovative from a storage vendor, that they have that really forward-looking, let's do what's right for the customer thought in mind. It was really refreshing, and I really like that message. And as you can see, we have a solution brief which kind of outlines use cases and how we work together best. And then, of course, with Silver Peak, we have a joint customer, Loophole and Stevens. So Zach Streelman from Loophole actually came by the booth quite a number of times, talking with customers and things like that. So another part of my job that's not listed out here as much is working with our fantastic customers. We have a lot of really, really great customers. In fact, you'll see a photo of one on the next screen. But they were coming by the booth, talking with prospects and things like that. So if you do want to speak to a customer, you want to learn here about Zerto from them versus us, which I understand you wanting to do, just let me know. I can certainly set you up with any customer that you want to talk to, and we have all our emails on the last page of the presentation. You can also see we had the opportunity to speak in a couple of booths. So Shannon is there in the lower left talking in the Intel booth, talking about hybrid cloud and data protection convergence and how you really see the two thoughts moving together. And at Zerto, if you even look at the evolution of our product set, was disaster recovery, but then we saw a benefit of data mobility and the fact that we could easily move an application around a total VMware environment. And then the next step to that kind of hybrid cloud was the offsite backup. We have something called a backup package, which is just a portable flat file that helps us move the application really easily to any type of cloud environment. And of course, the next step to that will be Hyper-V support and then other hypervisors and other public clouds. So that was a really hot topic at VMworld, to hear about the convergence of disaster recovery and data protection and backup. And, do you want to have a couple of products that do this, or do you want to have one? And if I have one, what does that mean for me? If I have two, what does that mean for me? So those types of conversations are really good. And then we also presented in the Maxta booth. So they are a company which does more in terms of storage performance. It's a software solution, but they do a little bit more in that aspect as well. So Shannon and I get to present there also during the show. So a lot of great synergies with our partners at VMworld, our technology partners. It was really fun to engage with them, because this is one of the only times that I anyway get to see them all, because we're all scattered in different places. So VMworld is a great place to catch up and see what's going on next. And the fun stuff. So there you can see all these Zerto Red T-shirts. Some of the fun things that we did with VMworld. So Master Disaster, that's our Game of Thrones themed T-shirt. So the first one was more medieval, and then last year we did Star Wars, and then this year it's Game of Thrones. We had some fun with I'm Not a Booth Babe pins, so make sure that people knew that everyone in the booth was able to answer questions about the product, varying scales, but still able to answer questions. And then, of course, Bob Lanning, one of our other great customers who stopped by our booth many times, that's him sitting in his free limo ride to the airport, because we had an event zone in our intuitive community, and he by far got the most points of anyone else. So for all the fun activities he did, tweeting out pictures, stopping by the booth, doing a video with us and things like that, so he got to take a big stretch with him to the airport. Okay, so then top takeaways. So Shannon kind of already hinted on the first one. So Tech Field Day is on YouTube. Go there, please check it out. We are doing another VMworld recap next week with Bright Talk, but it's going to be focused more on not what we heard, more on the trends overall. So Shannon's going to be doing that with, Shannon's the gentleman's name. I know it's Alistair.
Alistair Cook with V Brownback. And Alistair is, he's also done the Auto Lab. He's one of the guys that does the Auto Lab. So Alistair is just a great Kiwi that is a great guy to talk to, and I think it'll be enjoyable to pick his brain.
Okay, great. And then as you saw, we have the blog post there. If you go to the virtualization software blog, just Google Zerto, that information will come up. So it's really easy for you to kind of dig in and get that, what's the third-party perspective comparing Zerto versus a SRM with Beaster application. And so we do have a couple more questions that came in, so I'll turn over to Shannon. But before I do that, I just want to say, so here are all our email addresses if you have any questions for anyone. So again, Jennifer Gill running the customer reference program. If you'd like to talk to any of our customer references, happy to set that up. Sean is on the enterprise side, so if you're interested in a POC or something like that, certainly reach out to him. He can get you over to the right person if he is not. And then Jason Nolan does everything cloud service provider related, so interested parties there. And then Shannon Snowden, technical marketing architect, interested in tech field days, social stuff. That's really his area of expertise. And also, I don't know if we have any technology partners on the call today, so certainly reach out to Shannon. He can get you started with that as well.
Absolutely.
So, Shannon, over to you for questions.
All right. So I've got a question for Sean. So Sean, put on your thinking cap. This is a hard one. Can we perform IP customization and prioritization that we can set for the identified business critical servers that needs protection?
Excellent question. So just in case we lost any audio there over our shared session here, questions really around, can we perform customizations to the VMs and how granular can we get that recovery plan really? I think one of the great capabilities of Zerto is that you can protect an application very, very rapidly with a very simple plan. We also let you get incredibly granular down through individual virtual machines, their individual volumes, physical and virtual RDMs, as well as the MPKs, where you can configure all sorts of options there. You can also configure all of the virtual network adapters to do different network segment connections with different DNS server targets. You can also configure the test failover networking, of course, to be completely different from that live failover networking, so you can make sure that that's fully isolated, but also maybe re-IP'd even as part of a test, because if that IP reconfiguration is part of a live failover, you're probably going to want to do it in a testing facility as well, right? So, like I say, we make things very, very easy, but we also let you get as complex as your application needs, which I think is one of the great benefits that we offer.
All right, good answer. Okay, so here's another question. Let's see. This is for, let's do Jason on this one. So, Jason, are you ready?
I'm always ready.
Yeah, and this one is, it goes back to the, when we were talking about, the SRM not being able to do the test failovers with broken WAN, but let's move this over into an actual failover. So this question is, can we failover from production site to failover site when the WAN is also out or failed?
Well, the short answer to that question is yes, but it really depends on the scenario. So if the WAN link is down, you won't be leveraging the console at the production site because it won't be able to communicate with the target site. What you would do is access the console at the target site. One of the benefits of the Zerto product is whether you're managing the infrastructure yourself, you have the ability to access the Zerto communications through vCenter plugins or through a web portal that's built into the product. If you're working with a service provider, we have a portal that's built in to support multi-tenancy so that you can still have access and the controls to manage testing and failovers remotely for just your portion of the Zerto infrastructure. And so what we're able to do is support, in a multi-tenant environment, the ability for customers to fail over their Zerto environments, so you have the comfort and the ability to sleep well at night knowing that you have the control to fail over it in the event that you have a disaster, or in the event that you're not able to communicate with perhaps the operations team at the service provider. So it provides a few layers of redundancy from an operational standpoint, in addition to the redundancy you would have with the Zerto technology.
Very good. Got another question. Let's just play around robin here. Sean?
Sure.
Do we have any plug-in for Zerto that can be used with the vSphere client?
Great question. I think an answer that people thought might change based on some new releases from VMware, but interestingly enough, it'll be status quo. So the Zerto interface is actually already able to be accessed as a plugin with the vSphere client. We've had a plugin for vSphere since day one. So you can access us as a tab right in the vSphere C client. And I guess that's the funny thing that I had started by mentioning, because I think all of us, myself included as engineers at least, we all figured the vSphere back client, as it's also known, would be going away, either this VMworld or shortly thereafter. Turns out VMware said, nope, we're going to keep it. So our plugin will be available there for the foreseeable future. We also have plugged into the vSphere web client since 5.0 of vSphere. And the other great thing, you can just reach Zerto right through the browser. So you can access us over any modern browser through SSL and do all of your operations there as well. So however people need to access it, whatever permissions they might have, or whichever client that you use, we really support them all.
So are you saying the vSphere web or the vSphere client is sort of the VMware's version of Windows XP?
Yes, I am absolutely saying that.
You can't kill it. It's not going to work. I got Jen. This is for you. It's not so much a question as an observation, or I would call it almost gloating. Yay me from Bob Lang. Infamous from Bob. So
Bob is infamous and famous. So, you know, certainly during show floor hours with his Zerto cap on, that's where he's famous. You know, other events, more infamous. But generally, we had a lot of fun, I think, at the show. I think everyone did, which is great.
All right, so that looks to be most all the questions that we have right now.
Okay.
So I'll turn it back over to you, Jen.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us as, oh, it looks like we got one more snuck in, and it's a quick one.
Yeah. Yeah, so any place for use cases or POC available on install configure or for Zerto. So I'll actually take this one. So what we would, Karen, what we would absolutely invite you to do is we do free trials and just you know, get a feel for yourself, because we're very confident that if you get an opportunity to just get your hands on it and get a feel for it, it's easy to install. Sean can definitely talk about that. You know, within a few minutes you're up and running and you're actually protecting machines. And Sean, how many times have we done proofs of concept that just turn into production?
So without giving insider official info that's going to get me to lose my stuff, I would say over 80% of the proof of concepts lead to production install.
Yeah, and a lot of times, literally, the proof of concept install is the production install, because we're so non-invasive to your environment, and you get things installed and it's running and it's on the servers you need them to be protected, and you're going, well, am I going to do this again? So it's very simple to do an install in proof of concept, and we certainly invite that, and we have a test plan that you can use, a document as well. So always glad to share. Back to you, Jen.
Okay, great. So thanks. I'm glad we could sneak in that one last question, because I do like to promote the POCs. So everyone, thank you for joining us today. I hope you found this helpful. Again, if you do have any questions that we didn't get to, feel free to email any one of us, and we will get it over to the right person if we're unable to answer it. And we have another webinar 2 weeks from today with one of our great customers, same time on the 23rd, and look to register for that on our website as well. So Sean, Jason, Shannon, thank you for joining today. Everyone else, thank you as well. Have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.